Hey everybody, welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 204. My name's Stuart. I have like a weird voice, but with me is normally voiced H.A. Conrad.
Normal, I don't know. Why are you weird
Close.
voice today?
Just sickness, illness, allergies, I don't know, who knows. What's that thing called? The hole in the universe that we took a picture
The black
of?
hole.
Black hole. That is shining down upon me and making my allergies act up, I guess.
Nice. We have some news items to get through, and then we'll be
Do we ever?
We do. Quite a few today. And then we have a recap of Outpost. So why don't we dive in, because there's quite a bit to get through, at least on the news front.
And H.A. Conrad is showing her hand in our show notes by typing a 3-word review of Outpost for my benefit. Okay, but we'll move on and we'll get to that in a second. First up, I noticed, this is really just frivolous throwaway stuff, but Orbit Gum, they're the guys who do those really odd, humorous commercials about women, usually about women with shiny teeth.
Yes.
That's the one I'm thinking of, right? That like the
yeah,
blonde
the blonde, the sort of like air hostess like woman who's a little bit too perky.
Yes, with a British accent. And now they have a zombie version. Being undead shouldn't mean being unkissed. It was an ad on Twitter that I clicked on, and now I'm doomed to forever get more of those, I guess. With the hashtag time to shine. And then there's a really short 6-second clip of a guy making out with a zombie with shiny teeth in a bowling alley.
Yeah, I wouldn't have clicked on the ad, but I'm glad you did and shared it with the rest of us.
There you go.
So,
now I've described it. You don't have to click on the ad, but they made a zombie ad. So I'm always interested in what those are going to be about. Next, H.A. Conrad sent this to me by, I don't know how you sent it to me.
I texted it to you.
And I spent the rest of the day being pretty sad. So please, go on.
So I had heard about this actually a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, that's concerning. I wonder why we're not hearing more about this. And what I am talking about is basically antibiotic or antifungal resistant fungus, Candida auris, and this was a fungi that was found in an elderly person's ear in Japan originally. And they tend to find it in immunosuppressed people. The very scary thing about this is that the antifungals that we have that usually treat this and knock this stuff away, it does not appear to be working. And so people who get this, especially and likely because they are immunocompromised, tend to die very soon after, usually like within a month or so.
And this has visited your neighborhood, has it not?
It has, because of a woman who got basically plastic surgery in India, came back, bringing this lovely thing with her, and then ended up in Texas, where she ultimately died. And basically, the scary thing about this is that it's very difficult to get rid of. So even in a hospital room where they had basically completely scrubbed down everything, gotten everything done, and then they did the test at the end, and it was still there in the filters. And the concern that everybody, and it's also made a visit to in the UK. And the thing is that apparently hospitals are not talking about this because it's so insidious and scary that they don't want to freak people out. However, I am thoroughly freaked out after reading this article. So it's more like, I'm kind of like, well, I think everybody should be talking about it because shouldn't we be dealing with it? But
yeah, the description of every item in the room showing traces of Candida auris after a man had been in the hospital at Mount Sinai in Brooklyn. And after going through all their protocols to clean it, just saying like, it was on this, it was on that. It was literally, he like listed everything in the room I could think of, like windows, doors, doorknobs, ceiling.
Well, and
how does it get everywhere?
Right.
This is so weird.
And doctors are concerned because it's, in terms of, I think you'd probably almost have to treat this like a hazmat situation. I mean, basically beyond hazmat, but I just don't know what you do in this scenario, but you can be a carrier of this and not know it, and it wouldn't affect you if your immune system is strong. There's a lot of terrifying things about this. They are looking for different ways to treat it, so hopefully they get there. But man, this is really, really scary to me. So on that happy note,
I mean, if you want to think about this from I'm making it less serious for a second, but bear with me. If this this could potentially be a grounds for a Walking Dead universe type
Well,
scenario where everybody's infected.
well, girls
You
with
know,
all
we've
the girl with all the gifts esque, because that's the whole fungi
yes, and
thing.
that is fungus. That's definitely more fungus. But when you have a scenario where the entire population is infected with something, but nobody realizes it until the whatever
It's too
cataclysmic
late.
event begins.
Yeah.
So just saying, like, yes, this could be something along those lines.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yay. But
Speaking of sweet,
in happier news, yet another, or maybe not happy for some people, yet another
Yeah.
Walking Dead spinoff has been announced, and this looks like it's going to be more in the lines of like the younger generation of zombie apocalypse survivors, and what happens with them. This is
a
supposed
YA Walking Dead spinoff.
Basically,
It's being filmed in Virginia, but we don't really know where it's being set. But honestly, I guess how many places could you say look like Virginia? A lot.
But this is supposed to premiere in 2020 at some point, and we will see what happens with this. But yes, yet we have another one, and I don't know if this means they will end the storyline for The Walking Dead, which could potentially be true. So we'll see. At least on the show front. I mean, we know there's some movies coming out, so maybe that's their thought. And in other sort of, well, this is an interesting clash that is happening, but apparently the Black Summer series, which is the prequel or supposed prequel to Z Nation, has come out, and people are getting really worked up about it.
In both ways.
In many ways. So the thing about Z Nation is that it was schlocky, it was silly, it had like a comic element to it, and Black Summer does not have this element. Walking Dead fans are basically saying, look, you just stole all the sort of idea of Walking Dead. That's exactly what this is, and it's not even written as well. And, they're getting really upset about it. I don't know why you get that upset about it. Just don't watch it. But
well, also I've been seeing Z Nation fans saying like this was such a waste of time. I only got through one episode. I wish I just watched Z Nation instead, or I wish Netflix had just opted to bring in Z Nation.
Yeah.
And I for one have been watching Black Summer, and I'm only up to like episode 5 or 6, but I'm hooked. I don't know about you.
So I have not watched it yet. So
okay,
that may be our next project. Let's talk about that.
It's going to be a bit of a challenge because Game of Thrones is also starting, and we definitely wanted to review that. So I don't know. We'll let's figure out. We'll talk and figure out which one we can do and which order.
Okay.
But I think Black Summer is 100% something we need to talk about, and I want to talk about it for days and days. That's where I'm at.
So you're on the positive side, which is good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I've watched more than half of this show, and it's not like perfect. What is, but what it's not is something like Z Nation, which I did not want to watch past Harold Perrineau's death.
Yeah, you and I both did not enjoy that show as much, so maybe this is more along the lines of, I don't know, in our wheelhouse. So we can talk about that, and more to come on that later. In very happy news, I don't know if everybody caught the trailer, but the trailer for The Dead Don't Die was released, and it's going to be premiering at the Cannes Film Festival, correct?
Like opening up?
Yeah, which is nuts. But
you can't have that many celebrities without having some go juice, I guess. It's associated with the project, so.
I guess, but it's not normal to have this kind of a film open up Cannes, but I'm very excited about it. Part of me is still wondering, given the fact that the trailer was released on April Fool's Day, whether this is just still an entire elaborate hoax, which it totally could be. I mean, that has not escaped me, and I feel it might be, because it's like, you can't have Tom Waits and Bill Murray. I don't know, man. Iggy Pop.
But if the punchline to the joke is just being like, fooled you, it's not happening, that would just be lame. I don't think
it would be lame, but it would be really funny if they go through all of this elaborate thing and then just have people coming out of the screen being like, oh, it's so amazing. I could totally see that happening. Right. But, maybe I'm just being ridiculous.
You are being ridiculous.
I am. But on the topic of White Walkers and the wonderful upcoming premiere, which is tonight for us, but I don't know when this will come out. But tonight for us is the premiere of Game of Thrones. There was this little PBS thing on Monstrum talking about whether the White Walkers are actually Dragor, which is the Nordic sort of death demons or whatever you want to call them.
Or those tomb dwelling baddies from Skyrim, as I like to point out. And HA was like, they're not from Skyrim, they're from actual myth.
They are from actual myth. Dragor.
I'm just saying, I think, I had not heard of Draugr until I played Skyrim. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's just because
I'm an ignorant person who likes video games. But I also learn, okay? I learn some things.
But basically, the basics in terms of this myth and mythology, sort of the lore, is that Draugr come back, although they're made into monsters for some reason. So, if you're practicing witchcraft or if you die accidentally or that kind of thing, you might come back as a Draugr. And you kill people, and you wear sort of these ragged clothes and they can see your ribs coming out. Like, it's very, very similar to the White Walkers.
I believe we probably talked about Draugr in one of our very first episodes when we were like,
did.
Let's talk about every type of undead zombie creature. And I think we listed them.
But in terms of getting rid of them, the only way to get rid of them is with fire and cutting their heads off, which is in line with what Skyrim does. I think you can set them on fire, correct?
No, well, White Walkers don't go down with no... Well, I guess they don't like fire.
They don't like fire, but you have to burn them.
They're more into the obsidian.
They are, but so that's an added piece, but the fire and the decapitation, definitely there. So... I guess we'll see if a little bit more of this myth comes out as we get into the Game of the Thrones, and I'm all about mythology being added into things. And look, I mean, George R.R. has incorporated a ton of different myths into this saga, and I don't think he makes any bones about that. So we shall see what happens. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I have no doubt that they were borrowed from. Yeah. Like and then like the production, the design of the production also borrowed from like Northern European culture because it's north of the wall and etc. Yeah, makes sense. Why not?
Oh, there's a whole thing about the wall with the Draugr too, but so watch this wonderful little cute PBS video. It's a little like don't think it's made. I think it's made for younger people, but it's still kind of fun.
It speaks well to HA and Stuart, who are younger people at heart.
We are younger people. Anyway,
that's it. We plowed through the news so quick. HA, you were like, let's really make this news last because I don't want to talk about Outpost 2008.
Well, I still don't want to talk about it, but maybe I just want to get through it so we can just get through it.
This film came out in 2008 and was written by Ray Brunton. It's a British production. It was produced by Arabella Croft and Kieran Parker, who apparently mortgaged their house to pay for it for £200,000.
Oh, Arabella
So it was
Croft.
made for £200,000, and then it was optioned by Sony for $1.2 million. So that's why there's two sequels. I think that can be the only reason why there's two sequels. Directed by Steve Barker, and then we had a cast. The main lure is Ray Stevenson, who played Pullo in Rome. Right? I mean, that's his main claim to fame for me.
Yep.
You are familiar with that television series.
Yes.
And he's amazing in that. And he kind of brings the same sort of gravitas to this role as DC. So, it's a 90-minute film, and I think that's just perfect for what they're trying to do here.
Yep.
What do you have to say?
I started watching this and I was like, oh no, another zombie Nazi thing. And look, it's made for $200,000 and I get that, but just the writing itself was so bad. And the desaturated sort of nature of the filming. I mean, it just felt a little ridiculous. Given that it was made in 2008, and you have to give some kind of give it a little bit of leeway for that, because I do think now that in terms of filmmaking, cameras and things that are available right now are much better. You can get a Blackmagic and probably make this whole thing and it looks 10,000 times better than what this looks like. But I just felt like overall this felt like a very poorly made like web series. And it was just very choppy. The editing was not good. There were definitely some good shots, though. I will say there were some very creepy shots. I am not into like the sort of horror porn, and I feel like this was sort of giving
It
a little
bordered
bit of,
on that.
yeah. So these things I didn't really enjoy. I kind of feel like they were like, hey, let's have, and oddly enough, this as one does, there's a Stuff You Should Know podcast about Hitler and the Nazi drug use. I don't know if you've heard that.
No.
So basically, there's this whole thing about the Third Reich and Hitler and the things that they would do in order to keep their troops going and the uppers and all of that fun stuff. And that, had it not been for that stuff, they wouldn't have been able to do some of the things they were able to do initially. But part of where things started to fall apart is once these things started to take their toll on people, including on Hitler, who apparently had multiple injections every day. Who knows what level of like lucidity he actually was in eventually. And it is a very interesting podcast, but that's actually what I was thinking of watching this, in terms of the Nazis experimenting with science. And they do mention some of the American experiments with like ESP, and like a lot of interesting things were funded that you were like, oh, really? And it turns out it actually was true. Just about, and some of this stuff we have seen, like in a fictional form, like Stephen King's Firestarter, and just with government experiments in terms of like supernatural powers and that kind of thing.
Sure. JFK was getting injected with meth,
right,
too, by Dr. Feelgood. So yeah, I think this is probably, that at least is rooted in real history, but there's got to be some truth to the occult's fascination by the Nazis.
Oh no, there definitely
how many
was.
movies we've made about it, and what you're describing is more of a fascination with methamphetamines, which sure, I mean, we've all had that.
But it was with those, but the idea that there would be some way to like, especially in terms of like the scientific experimentation and research, like with atomic energy, and like people just didn't know how it worked, and so there was a lot of magical thinking related to that, but also to find some kind of an advantage in terms of like what is beyond human powers and that kind of thing. So I thought that was an interesting premise for this.
I agree.
But I feel like they almost glossed over it too quickly in this. It was sort of like, okay, so this is what happened and this is what we're going to do. And so I kind of felt like they could have fleshed out that storytelling a little bit here and made
an interesting looking goober device.
Yep.
And, yeah. And I think that they did get points for novelty and the way that the goober and the experiments affected these 20 German soldiers, or however many there were, with like existing between the waves or whatever, like the way Hunt describes it later on. Yep. But it does then end up with you having ghost Nazi zombies.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes, because they can like phase through things. Of course, then they don't really follow the rules of what ghosts can do later on, because DC closes a door and they just like politely wait on the other side of the door and don't go through it, because we've seen them go through things, right?
Right. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah. So they don't necessarily follow their own rules after they establish their
rules,
the setting for their occult ghost Nazi zombies. But I'm gonna give them extra points for setting. I think that you said that the script is bad. I think that the plot is a good intro. So ragtag group of mercenaries gets hired in a bar to go into the backwoods of a Eastern Bloc country ? Into the woods to find a bunker, and that's like really not hard to find.
No,
which is pretty funny. And then find something, and none of them know what it is, and they spend a lot of time in the first and second acts of the movie like wondering, what are we here to find? And that does
well, but the setup is that it's gold or that it's mineral deposit. So like I think
eventually
But he kind of indicates that that's what it is, even though that's clearly not what it is. And agreed, it was really easy for them to find this thing. It's just kind of like they drove to it. It was not hard to find at all. I kind of feel like this group would have been out of there a lot earlier than they were, especially after the initial weird run-in or the weird sort of battle, not battle or non-battle that they have, like, because they're mercenaries. So I just don't feel like they would have stuck around. Like, and so the guy, it's like, oh no, now you can't leave. That sort of lead up seemed a little ridiculous to me, but
Yeah, I agree that they probably would have left sooner. Assuming, I mean, given that they lose two guys, it's like
that's what I mean.
30% of their team on the first night. Yeah, or more than 30. Can't do math. What's the yeah? The DC probably would have said let's go, but then as soon as he does, Hunt has a counter option for that, which is like, oh, you try to leave and my employers will kill all of your family
right
members. Which how do you? Yeah, then what do you do?
All right,
so in
but
a way,
my counterpoint to that is, okay, we know that this is going on. Tell your employers what's happening because that's why we're coming out. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
There's no good that you can do here. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do to solve this issue. I think the employers probably would understand and would want to know, given that they are continually sending like at least 2 waves of people in, right? So
Yeah.
I just feel like that was a ridiculous counterpoint because it's like, okay, I think if you go out and tell the employers, hey, look, this is what we discovered, we have to go back in with better science or better whatever, that would make more sense. So just saying, it just seemed like a very weak argument to keep them all there. The better argument is that, hey, we've unleashed these like weird ghost zombies and we can't get through them, which he eventually uses. But the whole employer thing I thought was very weak.
It's hard to tell if they unleashed them or if those guys are just always there. I mean, the Hunt does to say, like, the only reason why things between the vibrations or whatever, or we cause vibrations that allows us to see the people who are stuck in the fields, the unified field theory. But yeah, that never becomes super clear to me either, like whether or not they never turned anything on.
True, but it felt like there was something that they had, almost like a psychic tripwire or something that
it's like their presence was all it took. But so another kind of inconsistency is that they lose their radio capabilities. It's basically as soon as they get into this like perimeter of the bunker, they lose their radio, which is, oh no, eerie and scary. But Hunt and his like Palm Pilot are still able to send Twitter like length messages back and forth with his bosses. Although they're not super chatty, they're not like, oh, send us pictures of the device or and he's not, like you say, he's not sending them updates like, oh, ghost zombie Nazis are here and they've killed half of the men already and I don't think we're going to get out of here alive.
Right.
Like you said, that would have been really good information. They could have at least sent that to the second group because at the end of the movie, the second group is going through exactly the same paces as the first group did. Like, oh, there's a guy in here. Oh, look at the men on the hillside backlit by floodlights and fog.
Yes, exactly.
So yes, there's a lot of things that don't work in this, but I do like the premise, and I think that the core cast of Mercenaries and Hunt are all good. I would say that the guy who played Wojtek should have been fleshed out a little more. Didn't really feel his storyline. Nope. Just about everybody else got a lot of screen time and got to, like, even Tak, who dies before Wojtek, is more of a character than Wojtek ended up being, which is just a shame.
Weird.
Like, hey, you've only got 6 mercenaries, or 7, I guess, if you count DC. There's only 7 of them. I think they can all get a couple of lines.
Right.
And Wojtek, his, like, all we really learn about him is that he's really sad about Tak being taken.
Yep. That's it.
Anyway, so yeah, an interesting group of people. You've got a guy with a French badge, but who's actually Scottish. You've got an Irishman. You got an American, and you've got English people, Russians and Polish, I assume. It's fun. It's a fun group of mercenaries, and I like that setting. I like, to me, this had a lot of potential, and you know what? When they're going through that underground bunker, it's creepy.
Oh, No, it's definitely creepy. And as I said, like some of the camera shots are really good. And some of the shots with the Nazi zombies, like showing them kind of coming in and out, are very good.
Yeah, the feet under the
Oh,
table
that was
scene.
excellent. So
Yeah,
they had, I think that's what I'm so frustrated by is that there was a lot of potential in this that I don't feel got realized. And could have been just with a little bit of extra storytelling, a little bit, better like building of this, in like a not superficial way. Like I think you could have, and there was like the whole they do this whole film with showing this particular experiment, which I thought was actually pretty good. So, I think that there
yeah.
was just, but the whole thing, and I get that obviously in order to make a sequel, you're going to have people that don't have all the information, but they don't necessarily need to have all the information because they could have the information but not believe it because it's kind of unbelievable. It just seems totally unfeasible to me that this guy who had been sent out there because they clearly know a little bit of what's happening out there in order to create a device, right? So they know a little bit of what's happening out there.
What device did they create?
Well, so the whole thing where like he knows the main what's his face the main guy that has contracted them, Hunt, knows enough that he knows enough so that he has figured out a little bit about what's happening and how to maybe potentially stop them. So it feels like there has to be some knowledge, at least rudimentary, about what's happening out there. At least vagaries, right? So the idea that they would just send these groups of people who absolutely have no idea of what's happening seems ridiculous to me, because you need to have, in order for them to recover whatever scientific information or whatever is there, they have to be able to counteract the Nazi ghosts.
And I sure hope Hunt isn't the only scientist who's been studying this machine for 18 years. Because if he was, then I don't know who their backup scientist is going to be.
But that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's not like they're totally in the dark about, they know generally what the expectation is, what is out there. So
yeah.
It just seems weird to me that they would just send in this group and not say, hey, look, you could run into some weird stuff out there,
It's a little curious too that they're going to find this device worth billions. This first group should really just be a recon group, and they're supposed to be helped by another follow-on group. But then, what do you think is the plan? Are they going to try and move the device out of the bunker?
Yeah, that's unclear to me. So it's sort of like this is all. It seems to be a little bit muddy, probably deliberately. Maybe we find this out in the sequels, but I'm not willing to find out.
No. Apparently, the sequels didn't even get the A for effort reviews that this one got. And that defense plan montage at the end is just really bad.
Yep.
The end is pretty bad.
Yes.
But it does tie up the loose ends for most of them. But when you have DC and Pryor, the American, and the Scottish guy whose name's Jordan, they're the only 3 soldiers left by the end, and they're like, all right, well, we're going to have to lure them into the machine room to do this ambush with an EMP or something. Some sort of anti-ghost zombie Nazi wave will be emitted. So the Nazis are just walking towards them at this really slow pace. For some reason, I don't know. I don't understand why the Nazis start on the edge of the clearing and walk in instead of...
Can't they just do whatever they need to do, right?
But
so
instead,
it's kind of weird.
It's this really slow walk, and they're shooting and blasting off claymores and shooting and fall back, shoot, fall back, and the zombies are just walking, and none of the shooting is doing anything. The only thing that slightly slows them down is when Pryor goes in for knife attacks or something and gets eaten, and that slows them down for a microsecond. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason for any of the shooting in the final scene. Maybe one person could have been out there just being like, okay, they're still coming. Now they're about 100 feet away. They don't slow down. They don't enable Hunt to turn on the machine in any way through any of their defensive falling back and going through thousands of rounds of ammunition. So I did think that was kind of weird. Also, DC dies off screen. What's up with that?
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
considering he's like the face of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even. I mean, at that point, we'd seen enough gruesome deaths of soldiers, Jordan's especially, where he's just getting like prison shanked for.
It was terrible. I was just
for
like,
a
are you
good
kidding
minute and
me?
a half.
Oh, I was so annoyed by it. I was like, all right, fast forward. Oh, wait, he's still getting shanked. Okay. Ugh, terrible.
So the knife in the teeth of Wojtek was probably a scene that you were like, oh, this is just torture porn.
Yep. I was
Yeah.
just like, done. I'm like, I couldn't wait for it to get done at that point.
So it definitely had problems, but it definitely had problems, I guess. Full stop.
Full stop. Yep.
Full stop. Also, right before the final act, there's a scene of Pryor and Jordan smoking a joint, which I'm like,
What?
they're doing this in Act 3?
Yeah, I know. It was like,
Yeah. So there's all kinds of funny stuff going on in this film. Funny bad, I guess. Not funny, haha. But I wanted to like it more.
yeah, me too. And I mean, look, again, as I said, a little bit of tweaking could have made this better. Apparently enough people liked it that they got funding for a sequel. But I, for one, will never be watching these sequels. So, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, that's fair. You know, we're gonna have a whole lot more to say, I imagine, about Game of Thrones, and I think about Black Sun.
Black Summer, right?
Black Summer, not Black Sun is the name of the sequel to this film.
Well, thank you for joining us to listen to our very brief but intense recap of Outpost. And we will be talking about Game of Thrones, the last season, next week. We're going to take a little bit of it, we're going to play a little bit by ear, depending on how many White Walker appearances there are. And then we're going to also eventually be interviewing Black Summer. If you'd like to give us your comments about Outpost or Game of Thrones or whatever, send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or leave us a message on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com. And until next time, ciao. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See ya. I think you said we were going to interview Black Summer, but I like that. I like that idea.
No, we're going to review Black Summer. Okay, sorry.
No, let's interview it.